So we're going to make these beautiful roses here. To start with, I'm going to be using air drying modelling clay. This is really good for doing the centres, and it keeps them very lightweight as well, so it's a really lightweight paste. So I'll start with using that, and then I'll talk about the crepe paper. When we open the packet, we just need a small amount. Now this is quite light and it's brilliant white, as you can see, really, really nice colour. Try and keep it airtight in the packet if you can. Obviously it dries with air, so we have to be a little bit careful. Now we just mix in the palms of our hands, and then we can start creating that cone shape just with our fingers to the one side of the ball. And as we roll, we get this cone. Now, as you can see, my cone isn't perfect. I tend to play with this a little bit afterwards. So we get our wire. This is a 24 gauge wire. You could use 20 if you wished. I'm going to put a hook in the end of the wire, and then we just pop that into the base of our cone. Now give it a little squeeze at the bottom of the cone. This is just going to seal it on, like so. Round off the edges if you've made them a little bit square, and I tend to just make it a little bit more dumpy and rounded in shape. There we are. So that's my cone. I would then put that to one side and leave it to dry. Now I have already got one that's nice and dry. It's been drying, I would say, for a good 24 hours, so it's absolutely fine to use. This can also be used as cones for your sugar flowers, your clay flowers, and what we're doing today, which is crepe paper flowers. So we're going to put that to one side because we don't need it just yet. The important thing we need are our templates. Templates are available to download on my website, which is cassiebrown.com. So let's look at the measurements here. My roses, I've got one that measures 6 centimetres. That's the large one. Medium is 5 centimetres, and then the smaller one is also 5 centimetres, but I've done it with a little bit of a kind of heart shape there. And these are just cut out of cereal packets, so there's nothing fancy or expensive about these, and you can use them time and time again as well. Now the crepe paper that I'm using is this brand here. I like this brand because it's got a very good stretch. As you can see, 250% stretch, which means you get quite a lot for your money, more than double really. And I'll show you why that's so important as we go on. And that little template there is for the calyx, which, let me just show you, is the back of the rose here. So we don't need that until the very end. Let's focus on the rose petals. So I've got my scissors. I normally work with 2 different pairs, large and small, and we're going to go with the large ones first. Now I need to cut out strips of paper. Now can you see this paper has got lines in it? I want the paper to go down my petals, not across. If they go across, the paper won't stretch in the same way and it'll look a bit strange. So we want it to be the width of our rose petal. You can go a little bit wider if you want, and I tend to use this as a measure so I know how wide I've got to go. Now we need 2, maybe 3 of these. I think I'll do 2 to start with, and then we can always go back and do more if we need. So I've got 2 strips for that size, and let's go medium. Again, exactly the same thing, just measuring how wide we're going, and then I trim away. So I'm going to do 2 of these as well, I think. Now I must admit, I don't really get hung up on the amount of petals I need because I like to add afterwards. And the centre of your rose. So we're doing the same thing, we're getting all of these strips ready before we cut out the petals. There we go. So I've got 1 strip for the small, I've got 2 strips for medium and 2 strips for the large. I might do another strip for the large. We'll see how it goes. So now we get our strip of paper, and I'm just going to measure how many times I can get this paper to fold. So we're measuring each one. Now this is going to give you your petals. And if you're like me, look, you've got a little bit that's a bit short. As you can see, that's a little bit short. I'm going to use that to the bottom of the petal, like so. And then we get our template and we simply cut around. So it is worth keeping any little bits that you have left over as well. It's amazing how easily they are used up for different flowers. And you could use them for the centres as well. So that's my first small petals done. And we do exactly the same for the medium size. So I'm going to measure and then fold the paper. And we keep folding. We're doing it in like a concertina shape. As you can see, I'm a little bit short on that one as well. That's absolutely fine because we're still going to use that, but make it to the point. It doesn't matter if there's one or two petals that are slightly off shape and smaller. We can just use those in the middle of the rose. So you'll never actually see the difference. There we go. So that's our one pile of medium. Do exactly the same. So we just measure, do that line, all important first line because that's your measurement, and then we can start moving along like so. So we're concertina the paper. It won't want to fold because it's going against the grain, remember, so the grain is coming down all the time. So we're kind of making it fit. And we gradually cut around. There we go. So those are my two petals there. So we've got the mediums done and the smalls done. Now we're going to the large. Now with this one, I think we're only going to get 4 in, so I'm just going to fold in half and then in half again. There we go, because these are much bigger. And then we gently cut around. Now be careful not to cut your template when you're doing this. It is very easily done. That's why when I do this, I always have a master template that I can go back to. It's quite surprising how your template will get smaller and smaller as you start to cut. So again, folding in half and in half again. And with the big scissors, we gently cut around. Now this is one of my favourite flowers to make in crepe paper. I actually think it's quite easy and it comes together really quickly, which is lovely. There we go. So we have our smalls and mediums, and these are our large. Now I do tend to keep them in separate piles just because it makes it a little bit easier to know where I am. That's the only reason. Now, the easiest way to describe how to do this, we take one petal. Now we're going to hold it between our finger and our 2 fingers, a bit like if you were blowing grass, for example, and trying to make grass whistle. We hold it in between and then we just curl. Now that instantly makes the paper stretch and it curls it up. And then we can get something thin, now maybe a pencil, but I want to show you a couple of techniques because the pencil is good, but it will give you very big curls. Can you see that? So it gives you quite big curls, which is fine, And that is lovely, as you can see, for a rose petal. Now if you wanted to do edible confetti, or if you was doing a wedding and you just wanted to put confetti on the tables, lots of rose petals, this is an instant thing for me, and it works so quickly. So it just looks lovely. So remember, we're stretching that middle bit, and then we're curving, using a pencil, these outer edges. And then just bring it in, pinch it a little bit, like so. Now I want to show you another technique as well, using Now I'd like to show you another technique, this time either using a cocktail stick or a thin paintbrush. So there's not much difference between the two. And what this does, it creates a thinner edge. So I'm just going to stretch the edges, and then I'm going to roll quite tightly around. Now can you see I'm doing this at a slight angle? And my aim is always to be in the middle there. So I'm just going to roll that again. So if you do go wrong, don't worry, just give it another roll. There we go. And as you can see, that makes the curls slightly smaller. So we're going to do this on all of them. I'm going to use the small paintbrush, but the cocktail stick works just as well. There we go. So I'm keeping all of these templates to one side. Now if they are stuck together, pull them apart, just trim any little excesses off, and then off we go again. So all these petals really start to look good now. This one is a little bit time consuming because there's lots of petals involved, but once you know how to make one good petal, the rest kind of come together really easy. So it's quite a nice, simple little thing to do. And if you were doing a wedding and maybe doing the buttonholes, I think they'd look lovely. So one more on the large. So again, just rolling those edges and making sure we haven't lost that nice cup shape as well. So that's the large ones, we put that to one pile. Now we move on to the medium. And again, exactly the same thing. And you can see how big that petal stretches. It's quite important to see the difference there. It really does make a difference to have good quality crepe paper. I've learnt this. You can get cheaper, thinner crepe paper, which, don't get me wrong, it's really good for some things, but not everything. So we're just going around the edges like so. And we do this with all of them. Stretch and then curl. Like I said, you can use a cocktail stick, you can use anything that's slightly thinner than your pencil, but the pencil works really well for the larger leaves. And as you can see, they really do start to look like rose petals. Lovely if you're going to do a gift for somebody and make your own little hamper. You could certainly fill the little hamper with rose petals and that would look so lovely. So we keep going. I'm not worried that some are slightly shorter because it's the way I've cut them. That's absolutely fine. We use all of them. But I do think they look lovely. And with the paper being thick and of good quality, it really makes it look like the rose petals are veined as well. So it's a bit of an instant thing. Oops. So keep going. We've nearly done this next size. Stretch a little bit to start. You'll start to do this and forget what you're doing. There we are. and the last few on the medium size. There we go. So those are our medium and these are our small. Now remember, medium and large. Now our small ones we haven't got as much and they are slightly different. Not much, but just slightly. You can see they've got a slightly sort of heart shape to them. But we do still want them to curl back, apart from one. So just make sure you keep one to one side. So we're still stretching and we're still rolling around like so. And we do this to all of them. We're nearly there now. Isn't it amazing how much the paper grows? Okay, last one. Now this one is a little bit shorter, so I'm going to use this for the main one to curl round. So I'm not using the end of the paintbrush to curl the edge of this at all, but what I am going to do is stretch it out like so. Now I'm going to come and take my cone, and then we have to put glue on the first one. So I'm doing it around just the edges of the petals. We don't need to cover it, and I certainly don't want it on the top of the petal, so just around the edge. Now can you see I'm placing the cone with about a centimetre gap at the top, and the reason for this is because I want to roll the one side all the way around. Now just stop and hold for a second, just so that gets a little bit firm, and then we go round with the rest. Now by doing that, can you see you've created this lovely spiral? So we're just going to hold that until that sticks completely. Now never worry about this shape, or again, a bit like a peony, you always look into the centre of the flower, you never look really to the side. So once that's stuck and we're happy with that initial shape, then we can start going. So just keep hold of it just for a minute so that it stays in that one spot. So now we can start putting the other petals round. So we're going to put a little bit of glue just in a V shape to the bottom of the rose petal. Now I'm going to put this over my little half that I've just made, my little curl, and then we hold together. So we're just holding it in one place. As you can see, it wraps around really nicely. And I'm going to let that curl. In fact, I might curl it round a bit more just to give it a bit more shape. So a little bit of glue just at the bottom there, just to wrap that round a little bit more. So do keep looking at it, making sure it's where you want it to be. But I think that looks nice. As I say, the rose is very much about looking into it and making sure you're liking the shape that it's making. I want that to be curled back a little bit. So take your time and do make sure it's where you want it to be at this particular point. Now we move on to the other 3 petals. I'm going to use this one because it's closed the most. And then again, a little bit of glue just on the base. If we covered it in glue, it wouldn't look as open. Now the next petal, I'm looking at the middle of the petal, will go at the end of the last petal. So it's kind of going just there. Now very important when you add these petals, don't look at this section here, but look at the top. I want it to be nice and even. If you start moving your petals down, then it's very easy to have a seeded cabbage, which does happen from time to time. So we're just curling that and holding it into position while it sticks a little bit. And then we keep going. So roses are quite simple. It's just that little bit of know-how, I think. And it's really important that the rose in the middle is quite closed, because then it looks more romantic, I think. So remember, I don't want to lose that height, so I'm trying to keep that in the right place, and then just holding it for a second. And you can decide where your petals go. I don't tend to follow a rule. I tend to put them where I think they look nice. As you can see, that's starting to happen. And then we can move up a size. So we start bringing these. And I don't think I'm going to use all of these petals. Now, if you were doing an arrangement, you could easily just use that as it is. I think that looks lovely. But we're going to start adding more petals. So again, just that little V at the bottom, and then bring it round. And we just hold in the way. And we can just bend them. That's the beauty of doing it in paper. You can really put it where you want it to be. That's looking good. So putting it down for a second, I'm just going to put glue on a few of the petals. So 1, 2, 3, maybe a fourth one. Pick and choose your petals, because it's your rose that you're doing. You want it to look beautiful. And then we start adding them. Keep going and just hold it down while it sticks. And we're going to do this all the way around. I'm trying to pick the smaller petals first, because we want it to look like it's smaller in the middle, and then the larger petals go on the outside. Remember to just hold it down for a second, just letting that glue stick. Now you can use a hot glue gun for this, but with a hot glue gun you can get a build-up of glue. So just be aware of that. I think it's quite nice to use this glue because it squashes flat. I'm actually thinking it doesn't need that one, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to put it on. Oops. So just make sure we're sticking them down. As you can see, that is looking beautiful already. So now we're going to come over. I'm going to leave those and come over to some of the bigger petals that I've done, because I think I'm certainly ready for those. And again, we're just doing that little bit of a V just on the bottom of every petal. So now I'm getting to this stage. I'm putting this on first because I don't want to keep stopping. So just put your little bit of glue on, and then off we go again. So my last petal was here, so I'm now going to put the next petal in between those two. And again, we just hold it down. Now remember, you're keeping that top piece level. You can come down just a little bit, but not too much. And we really just hold that into position. You could always dust the edges of these petals to really make them pop as well. So just hold down. I'm actually going to move that one round a little bit and squeeze in. I'm squeezing at the bottom just to really make sure it holds tight and firm. And I'm trying to keep that level top shape as well. Don't start working your way down the wire. That's where I find most of the roses go wrong. And I do think this is going to have maybe just 5 of those larger petals. Like so. So I'm just holding that on now, just letting it set a little. Really important to give it a little minute to hold, because otherwise all your petals are going to fall off and you're going to be very disheartened. So really give them a little squeeze right at the back there. Make sure they're all where they should be. This really just secures it on. And then turn it upside down. And we can look. And I think that looks beautiful. And as you can see, I haven't used all of my rose petals. Probably the medium one I've used the less of actually. But that looks stunning as it is. You could keep building on that and making it much bigger, but I actually think that looks lovely. Now we come to making the calyx. I come to get some green crepe paper now. And I'm just going to get my template. I'm going to cut a strip. And then another strip as well. Because the same thing, we're going to measure this. Now my top tip for you is if you accidentally cut your strip and it's not quite wide enough, don't panic, just stretch a little bit. Not too much, just a little bit. And that will make all the difference. I'm folding it in half. And then in half again. And then that fits on there beautifully. Large scissors, and we just snip around. And then just cut that bottom piece off. Always move your excess. Now you do actually need 5 of these. I think I've cut 4 there, so I'm just gonna cut one more piece out. So always do one half and then turn it round with the other half. Don't struggle and try and manage it on your, manage turning the scissors. Okay, so once we've done that, now if we want to, we can do little snips because they do have sort of little bars sticking out and sometimes that can look quite nice. And this really just finishes it off. Like so. And you can see how just doing a couple of those little snips has really changed the way that looks. So just a few more. And I'm curling it a little bit as well. And we're doing this with all of them. So just little snips and then stretching them out. And this is why this paper is so good. When you come to stretch it, it just does its own thing. It's beautiful. There we go. And then just a little bit more. Oh, broke that one off. Don't worry if you do break it off. Just do another one. Nobody knows. We do get hung up on perfection. And perfection is in our own heads, not in other people's. There we are. So once we've done that, now we are ready to put them on the back. So I'm just wiping the table a little, and then I'm getting my glue, and I'm putting glue just along that bottom piece there. And we do it on all of them, get them all ready. So you can see it's not all the way along, it's just under halfway. And then we want to create a star shape to the back of our rose there. So we put the first one on and just hold it for a little minute. You can see that curls lovely. And then the next one. And again, just hold around, let it dry for a second. If you don't let it dry for a second, it'll just want to ping back up on itself. And it gets a little bit annoying. I see how I'm spacing them out because I want them to go round evenly as well. Now that one's a little bit too close, so I'm just moving him around a little bit more. And don't worry if you've got any white glue showing because it dries clear. That's the good thing about this glue that I'm using. So we just hold down. And there we have it. There's our calyx to our rose. And then if I just bring in the other roses, showing you the different colours, don't they look stunning? I hope you've enjoyed this video. For more information, please go to my website, cassiebrown.com. Thanks for watching.